A geometric plane is something that is created when we stack lines. So we talked about how if points get stacked, we create lines. Well, if we continue to scatter those points and create more lines, we eventually make something that's called a plane. And a plane is like a solid flat surface, like your desktop or a sheet of paper. Except like a line, planes technically go on forever. So it's really hard to imagine. Think of it like the sky. It keeps going in all directions, and we really can't see the end of it. That would be more like a plane, okay? Where your sheet of paper has edges. A plane really doesn't have edges, but we have to kind of imagine that those edges aren't there. So let's take a look at planes. So this is an example of a plane. We're going to represent it as a flat surface. Yes, this has edges, it has boundaries, but we have to imagine they're not there. We're going to imagine that those continue and that they're not actually there, that these actually continue in all directions without stopping. Okay? And we can have points and we can have lines and rays and segments that live on the plane. You know, just like your desktop, you can set a pencil, which is a good example of a segment. You can rest your pencil on your desk. That is a segment resting on a plane. Okay? So here's some notes. Let's get some highlighters or your notebook out. So we talked about how planes extend in two directions. There's a length and a width, or we might think of it as like up and down and left and right. Okay, it goes in two different directions, where a line technically either just goes left, right, or just goes up, down. A plane does both, so we call it a two-dimensional object. It goes in two directions. Planes are usually represented with a shape that looks like a flat surface. Okay, so we usually draw it as one of these like tilted squares or rectangles to kind of represent a flat surface like we see in this picture. That's kind of how we draw them in geometry to represent a plane. Let me move down here. And when we name planes, and I'll go back up to the picture in a second, but planes are named for three non-collinear points or a capital italic letter in the corner. That letter will have no dot. It's not a point, it's the name of the plane. Just like the little letter we write next to a line, you know, the little letter M in our example for a line. It wasn't on the line, it was just kind of nestled there next to the arrow. Same with our plane. So let's go back up and look at that picture again. So in this picture, if I was going to talk about this plane, I could definitely call this plane M. And again, we actually write the word plane. It has no symbol when we're writing it. Sorry, that's really messy. But plane M. Okay. Or we call it plane. So I can do this a little bit better today. And then we list three points on that plane as long as they don't completely line up. And it's really hard to see, but Q, U, and I don't really line up. If I were to draw a straight line, U would be off a little bit. So I would call this plane Q, U, I. Okay? So we pick three letters or the capital in the corner. The Z is off the plane, and we'll talk about what to call him in a little bit. So let's go do some problems here. It says planes can be tricky to draw. Sketch plane XYZ and also name it R. So let's do these problems. A lot of times I tell you to do lots of things in one problem. So let's start with the basics. Let's just sketch a plane first. Okay? Don't worry about naming it yet. Sketch a plane. So think to yourself, how do I draw a plane? And a plane is going to look kind of like a tilted rectangle. There's my plane. The next part of the question says, call it XYZ. Well, we read in our notes that X, Y, and Z have to be on the plane, but they can't line up. They have to be non-collinear, right? So let's give ourselves 3 points. 1, 2, 3. There. They don't line up. There's 3 of them. And then I can go through and label each of them X, Y, Z. There we go. So this could be enough. This is plain X, Y, Z. Okay? So that's all you would have to do. This problem throws in one more thing. Also call it R. So remember, R is not a point. R is a fancy letter that we are going to write up in the corner. Okay, we'll make it a fancy R that's all scrolly. Okay, so we could call this plain R. All right, now you don't need the letters and the purple R. Either one of them alone would be fine to name the plane, but they just wanted us to practice and do both. Let's do one more little practice here. Okay. It says sketch plane EFG such that line AG is on the plane. Again, this is where these problems tend to tell us to do a whole bunch of stuff at one time, so it's smart to break it up. So let's just sketch a plane. Okay, I know how to sketch a plane. There. Done. Sketch a plane. Part 2 was call it EFG. Well, okay. So again, if I'm going to name it for 3 points, they have to be 3 non-collinear points. So 1, 2, 3. They're non-collinear. And then I go through and label them. E, F, F, and G. Okay? There, so it's EFG. Now, as one more problem, it says AG, line AG is on the plane. Well, I don't have a point A, so let's go ahead and add a point A because I need it to make the line. And then I have to draw a line that goes through A and G. So I'm going to draw a line that goes through A and G. There's line AG. And it is on my blue plane. Okay? So I've met all the criteria. I've done everything they ask. It says draw it on the plane, so that line is on the plane, right? It's not falling off anywhere. So I've done all those items. So again, break them into little pieces because these problems tend to throw a lot at you at once.